Hotep, KPFK's Freedom Now, would like to provide an anti-imperialist update on Syria. Why? Because trillions of our U.S. tax dollars are fueling the military-industrial complex rather than serving the citizens of the United States, our money, and to continued cutbacks at all levels of social programs, education, housing, medical care, employment, and so forth, has a disproportionate effect on African and people of color. Hence, we advance the position that people of color and all progressives must have an independent foreign position from the 1% of the United States. Hence, we welcome Johnny Achi from Arab Americans for Syria. Mr. Achi has provided for over 4 years insight into the conflict in Syria being from Syria that has not been provided by any media outlets, from the right to the left, including KPFK's drive time programmers. The demonization of Syria's President Bashar al-Assad by the State Department and their media lackeys is a prerequisite for regime change, as we have seen in Libya, Cote d'Ivoire. The list is long. Humanitarian intervention by the U.S. exceptionalist forces has confiscated or forked over to progressives in relationship to the Middle East leadership of the Ba'athist Party led by Bashar al-Assad. Slowly, people are seeing the truth. We welcome back Johnny Achi from Arab Americans for Syria.
Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight.
4th year anniversary of this very sad crisis that had hit Syria back in 2011. We believe it's been a crisis or what we consider to be a war on Syria for the last 4 years. A crisis that, in my opinion and the opinion of many Syrians, would that not have been so bad, or would have probably ended much sooner if it weren't for the continuous U.S. intervention and the continuous U.S. Interest in the Middle East, trying to overthrow the Syrian government. We know for 4 years that the United States have been talking about moderate rebels. And I've been on your show, it's been about at least 3.5 years, and I have repeatedly said there is no moderate rebels in Syria. Please, can someone point out one to me? And luckily now a lot of researchers and many mainstream media even have starting to trying to identify, tell us who it is. Now the United States government want to support what they call Jabhat al-Nusra, or Nusra Front, which is exactly the branch of Al-Qaeda in Syria. They're trying to say that they are less extremist than ISIS. We continue to say all these people have the same ideology. And funny enough that Qatar said, we will go ahead and send more money and support more moderate rebels, and Nusra Front is one of them. All they have to do is denounce that they belong to Al-Qaeda. So to them, just merely by saying, even though you commit atrocities and you are actually Al-Qaeda, but if you come out and say, we don't belong to Al-Qaeda, you receive all the weapons. How funny that Monday, the Al-Qaeda Syrian affiliate Al-Nusra Front on Monday reaffirmed that they belong to this global extremist network, and they denied any plan to break away and become more internationally accepted rebel forces or moderate rebel forces. They even tweeted that they are absolutely, completely denied any false accusation that they are not the Al-Qaeda in Syria. So how much more do we need to convince the world that U.S. is pouring money into the hands of extremists in the Middle East? Now we get back to your point. Hillary Clinton is receiving money from Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. I'm going to remind what Joe Biden just said a few days ago when he explained that, yes, Turkey, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, the same 5 countries, are so determined to take down Assad that yes, they poured. He admitted that, yes, they poured billions of dollars and tens of thousands of tons of weapons into anyone who would fight against the Syrian President Bashar Assad. And al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and extremist elements of jihadists have received part of that money and part of that weaponry. That's Joe Biden. I want to remind also the listeners that many senior officials have discussed this. General Martin Dempsey, back in December 2014, and he repeated it a few weeks again back on CNN. He said, we know who arms our friends in the Middle East, arms ISIS. Supposedly, the United States government is waging war on ISIS, yet Martin Dempsey said, we know that major Arab allies to the United States are the ones who fund ISIS. Senator Lindsey Graham, in attempt to clarify what Dempsey was saying, he said, yes, the fund, because the Free Syrian Army, the moderate rebels, have failed in fighting the Syrian President Bashar Assad, so now these people were sending money to try and beat Assad. So we keep going back and forth to the same point. The United States government is trying to overthrow a sovereign nation, a president that is liked by most of his people, even many foreign, Western reports, and we've talked about the show, say that yes, 10, 15, 20% maybe of the same people want President Bashar Assad out, but 70, 80% of the people still have his support. We feel he's a hero for standing up against these extremist groups. We know what will happen to Syria if the Syrian government falls. We saw what happened in Iraq. This war that took place in Iraq, and then we go back, and this is the beginning of the U.S. intervention. And again, next week marks the anniversary, 12th year of the invasion of Iraq. Invasion of Iraq of 12 years ago should not have happened, would not have happened if the United States and Bush at the time did not lie to the American people about weapons of mass destruction. We know 1.5 million Iraqi lost their lives over a lie. We know over 40,000 American soldiers either lost their lives or have permanent disability because of a lie. Was anyone held responsible for that lie? Was Bush tried? No. So now we're repeating the same mistake over in Syria. 200,000 Syrians have lost their lives. And I do need, on this somber occasion, we need to be reminded of all those Syrians who have suffered throughout this war. Of all, we need to be reminded of the tens of thousands of the brave men of the Syrian Arab Army and the men and women of the National Defense Forces who have given up their lives defending Syria. Over 75,000 people of these dead people in Syria were belonging to the Syrian Army or the National Defense Forces. These people are fighting terrorism. We need to stop kidding ourselves that there are rebels. Anyone who carries arm against his people and commits atrocities against civilians just because they're minorities is not a moderate rebel and should not be given weapons. Dedon, yes, the Syrian army is making advances. This week has been tremendous advances for both the Syrian army and Iraqi army. These are the two entities who are really fighting terrorism. They're paying a heavy price. And ISIS is being pushed back and is being defeated by these two armies. And the Lebanese army, we need to commend them for what they're doing in Lebanon also to prevent them from coming in. However, the U.S. allies, what they call a coalition, this is pretending to be fighting, made up of Qatar and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Kuwait, the same countries who are supporting these jihadists, acting like now they're fighting. They're not fighting. This is all a propaganda smoke screen. It's like trying to slap them with the left while shaking hands with them with the right. You need to stop sending weapons. All the weapons that the United States have sent, knowingly and unknowingly, reportedly, the ones that they announced about and they haven't announced about, they've smuggled into Syria, all ended up in the hands of ISIS. Every single weapon today is in the extremist hands. And we're still talking about wanting to train more rebels in Jordan or in Israel or in Turkey and send them back into Syria. They're going to give their weapons back to these extremists. And we're going to end up, the Syrian people have to end up fighting this.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right.
They've tried the humanitarian corridor, didn't work. They switched just now from the humanitarian back to the Bush's idea of fighting the global war on terrorism, because that was the best way to enter any place. We know, sir, that the real people who are fighting, we told them, if you really want to fight terrorism, put your hand in hand with the Syrian army, with the Syrian and Iran and Hezbollah and these groups who are fighting on the ground, and they have been fighting terrorism. They've been fighting Nusra Front. They've been fighting ISIS. But the United States didn't mind that al-Nusra and ISIS are going into Syria, as long as they don't come back here. Now, we talked about how when you grow a monster big enough, it's going to come back and bite you. And we've said on your show, they're coming back here. They went back to France, and they will be coming back because they'll be pushed out of Syria. Now the United States feels, okay, we want them to stay there, but we don't want them to come back. And if they're going to come back, we're going to pretend and keep them inside those. So they're hitting them where the borders are. They're hitting them where their interests are. We know that they're trying to, when they entered the Crete, when they entered where the oil is in northern Iraq, that's when the United States government started, bombarding them. But the truth is, you're right. You need to put hands in hands with the countries that are fighting them to finish them off. If that's not going to happen, if you're going to continue to insist that Syria president must go, I want to remind the listeners one more time, why are we hanging on to this president? President Assad, to us, why we consider him a hero? Because we know what the alternatives are. We've seen what happened in Iraq when the secular government left. We've seen what happened in the small town that these extremists took over. They committed genocide against. What do you want me to talk about? I'm going to mention, and I talked about your show back in 2012. I want to remind, I will never forget reading this in the New York Times. Peter Galbraith, a former American ambassador to former Yugoslavia, who had witnessed ethnic cleansing, he made a chilling prediction from the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington on the Holocaust commemoration at the time. He said the next genocide in the world, and he was making an attention to the world. Listen, he said, will be against the minorities in Syria if the Syrian government will fall. We know if the Syrian government falls, if President Bashar Assad takes off like most of the president did in Libya and in other places, that this Syria, if we think right now 200,000 people is bad, we will have millions. There is 4 or 5 million Syrians. We will be taken out. Okay, it will be a true genocide. So let's just stop thinking about our interest in the Middle East and do we need to put another puppet government in Syria versus a secular government that's respected and loved by its people. No, let the people really choose who they want. Let's stop sending weapons and let the true democratic process take place, and let's see what the people want.
There will be a demonstration in support of the people of Syria, as well as in terms of U.S. dollars not being used to finance war, but to being used to finance social development in the United States next Saturday, 12 p.m. in front of the CNN corporate building at 6430 West